welcome to Time Thief deck profile / deck guide. This is a really fun deck overall to play with and was to make, but it kind of was harder to me on some points because rank 4 engines are not the best right now, although I still made a very nice list. And I really much enjoying making the new formats of videos, just like I made my DDD one, so I'm really much going to announce that every single video I'm going to do of a deck profile of sort is going to be like that. But those videos are going to take a little more time to make, so do be patient and understandable that if you want the higher quality videos, you kind of need to wait a little bit. Secondly, I'm just going to say this: if you want to see more videos like this, why not just consider subscribing and following me on social media so you maybe be able to know what kind of deck I'm bringing to you next, as well as maybe vote from the options I give to you and be notified immediately when I post a video. And secondly, you're more than welcome to check out other yugitubers in the card in the description down below, and also take part in the giveaway, which I'm kind of asking myself why some people do not do that. There also might be kind of a topic that is a little bit not on the best side I might going to talk about this week or the start of next week, so do be on the lookout for that. If you're interested to see that, you're more than welcome to. If not, that's also a particular thing as well. But without further ado and without taking any more of your time, let's jump right into the Time Thief list, shall we? Alright, so without wasting any more time, let's jump right into the list. So one thing I would say about the list before we'll just really explain these 8 Time Thief monsters a little bit is the fact that this deck is mostly budget, but there are some cards here a little bit on the expensive side, which we will discuss them there, as well as some text options that I might like to run and you do not, as well as we're going to discuss them in the text, so do be patient for that. If you do not like some of the options that I do have other options as well. But this is the Time Thief lineup that I decided to run, which is 3 Regulator, 3 Winder, 1 Puzzle Ship, and 1 Chrono Coder. Regulator is just, if you control no other monsters, you tribute it and you summon 2 of these 5 overall. You just summon, most of the time, if you do not open up with a Winder in your hand, you summon a Winder and a Puzzle Ship. If you open up with a Winder in your hand, it's depending on your field and how much on your interruptions and stuff like that you can allow yourself to bring out, because most of the time you bring out 2 to 3 interruptions, like 2 Xyz and a Lambda, which we'll get to that, which also give you an interruption. So it depends. It's pretty much depends on your board for the most part of what you want to bring out. So yeah, it's really much depends for this one. But yeah, this is pretty much what it does. This one does. It's just helping you bring these 5. This one, even if you open up 2 copies of this, it's not the end of the world. You can normal summon the first one, which will give you the search, and then the other one, which is the other effect, which is really good. Allow you to detach an Xyz material from an Xyz monster to special summon it from the hand, which is also really nice. So the effects are separate and just really cool. Puzzle Ship does the same thing as this, but only summon itself from the graveyard by detaching a material while it's in the graveyard, but it banishes it once leave the field. And Chrono Coder does, again, summon itself from the graveyard, but banish it once leave the field, but only when an Xyz monster leave the field by a card effect. So it's pretty much the worst, but you still need to run the one, and honestly these 2 are just bricks for the most part, but they're also 1000 attack, and this one's 600, so there could be used in some fragile situations for just a normal Mirage, which could work. And this is also kind of like a hand trap magic cylinder, sometimes used in time, but for the most part this is just the lineup you need, because these are bricks and these are your good ones. Honestly, I wish Time Thief will have more good cards for the most part in terms of monsters, but that's pretty much what we got. So that's it for the Time Thief. Now we'll move on to the supporting rank 4 engine, or should I say level 4 engine supporters. First off, let's start off with Parallel Exceed, followed up by a mini Zoo engine, a mini Rocket engine, and then a Singing Lanius. So let me explain these. So first and foremost, I think there is really no problem to explain Parallel Exceed. Parallel Exceed is just, you link summon, you get 2 copies of this. If you have this in your hand, you summon them for one of the link arrows, so do remember not to clog the link arrow if you have only summoned with an Auto Mirage. So if the arrow is clogged, you cannot really summon it, but if you do, you special summon it, and then you summon another copy. They both become level 4, that can be used for links or for Xyz play, which is really good, so it's kind of a god card in this deck. As for the Zoo engine, these are your additional good normal summon if you have to. So sometimes you do not open up with this, but you still open up with a Winder, but Winder is kind of okay to normal summon, because sometimes it's just you're not able to go anything if you waste your normal summon on Winder, so I decided to go with these two because they're just dupes. They can be even Thoroughblade and Rat Pierre if you want to. It's obviously up to you, but I decided to go with these two because I just felt like these two are better for me, and honestly I just want to swing out my ultimate rare for the most part. It doesn't really matter for the most part what zoos you run, I just decided to run with these two. Tracer and Rocket and Silver Rocket are here because of Quick Launch, which we run in the deck, which is multiple times per turn. You can activate it, so it's just really good. And also, if you pop up one of your continuous spells, you can just use it with Tracer to summon this directly from your deck if you need the additional extender, which is really good. And then lastly, Singing Lanius, because it's searchable by 4 Strix, which we do run in the extra deck, and it's also just turning 2 monsters technically into 3 if you have like one of the materials to be Buzzle Ship or you have a Redoer in your hand. Then you can just turn two monsters into 3, which can help you really much so to set up Xyz plays later, and also set up the Lambda, which is very important. But for the most part, let me say this. The reason why we didn't run, in my opinion, Goblinberg and stuff like that, because I feel like the Goblinberg is really not that good, because sure, you could say it's like Regulator, but Regulator gets itself most of the time off the field before your opponent, like, most of the time activate Effect Rail. They're going to activate Ash against it, so you can just negate that, or use Cold by the Grave or something like that. But in terms of a Goblinberg, if your opponent kind of stop it, it's mostly over, and it's not really giving you much benefit compared to this thing. Like, if this goes off, like, the risk-reward is worth it. In terms of Goblinberg, not so much. So that's why you run these, because I think, like, these are the best options that you can have in your deck. So I just feel like these are just the best options. If you have something else that you want to, you're more than welcome to. I just decided to go with these. So that's it for the level 4 supporting engine. We'll move on to the hand traps. So we'll run 9 slots for hand traps. Technically this is not a slot for a hand trap, but it's still necessary. So we're running 3 Gamma, 1 Driver, 3 Ash, and 2 Effect Veiler, which I wish I could just not run this and just run 3 Effect Veiler, but whatever. Can be any hand traps you wish, except from the Gamma, which Gamma is very important because it's searchable. I would say this for anybody who want to try to run Imperm. Imperm is not really good in this deck because it conflicts with Shade Brigadier, which we do run 3 off because it's just a really good extender. And Gamma, like I said, it's searchable because Redoer is psychic, and it's going to banish itself sometimes during your turn to just help you search an interruption, which is really good. Ash and Effectively are just good hand traps, and mostly what the hand traps are help you do is either they giving you an additional not extender, but like additional negation in your hand if you're going first, or giving you ways to stop your opponents going second. So sometimes you don't even mind using the Gamma in your hand to just like stop your opponent if you're able to. So these 8/9 just really proved for the most part for being very useful. Honestly, you can run whatever you wish, but I do say this, these 4 cannot be changed because they are searchable. In my opinion, it's just very important to have these because they're part of your interruptions. As for the spells, except from this one, we mostly run just extenders or just cards that just help you just start your game, and cards that you don't mind your opponent to negate them, because if they negate them and you have a Regulator in your hand, you can just still start your plays with a Regulator and they just waste a hand trap, which is really cool for you. But yeah. So 3 Cold by the Grave, obviously, because you don't want to get hand trapped. We'll follow this up by 3 copies of Quick Launch, because Quick Launch is absolutely insane. It's not the harder ones per turn. Obviously in Rockets it's absolutely amazing, but here it's also pretty good. 3 copies of Tenki, because we sometimes do want to search the zoo stuff, so that's really work. Also, I'll move it a little bit around because I don't want you to glare out on the good people here. And anyway, Tenki is just sometimes, like I mentioned again, these are cards that you can just activate, your opponent just negate them for good reason, obviously, because they think these are your starters, but then you just summon the Regulator and start going off. And obviously Tenki, like I said, sometimes if you don't open up with the Regulator, just allowing you 3 additional copies to see your zoos. And honestly, you're also running the 1 Barrage, which I have to proxy, because I do have Barrage, I just don't really want to look through my full entire, like, thousands of cards collection, which I don't know where that is, for some reason, and just find the 1 copy of Barrage, which is kind of annoying, so I'm not going to do that. But yeah, it's pretty much, if you open up with the Barrage, it's your God card. Like, a Regular and Barrage just mean like 4 interruptions or something like that. It's like, it's absolutely insane, but I'm going to obviously show in the combos the more, honestly, normal hands. so you're going to see them as well. But yeah, these 7 are just like extenders that you don't mind if your opponent negate them if you have like the correct hand, so just fine. They can be used as bait, and Cold by the Grave because you don't want to get hand trapped on your actual important cards. So do keep that in mind. And that does it for the spells. Now I'll move on for the traps. So let's start off with probably the most important traps, which is the 3 copies of Shade Brigandine, followed up by the 1 copy of Flyback and the 1 copy of Retrograde. These are your traps. Also, I forgot to mention, I do not run the Time Thief spells because I do not feel they're really good. I'm just going to say this. Startup is good, but you do not really have enough monsters to allow you to run a startup, and Hack is just terrible. Like, there's really no reason to run more bricks in your deck, which is already kind of struggles. So that's the reason I don't run them. And also, the draw effect doesn't really help you that much compared to these cards' effects if you summon a Perpetua and just, like, attach one of the traps. So it's just a little bit better. But as for these, let's explain. So, Shade Brigandine is obviously just a better, like, an amazing interruption if you're able to use this. It's just like a set card that you can just activate. If you do not need the extender and just you need it during the end, it's just giving you an interruption on top of your Redoer, which is really awesome. So that can work really much in your favor, and I really like this. Flyback is just mostly here because you attach this with Perpetua. It's also just a nice effect, I guess. But mostly it's here because you attach this with Perpetua, and Retrograde is the more important trap out of the two. But you only run one of each of these because they're mostly bricks, like I said, just like with the spells of Time Thief. But the spells of Time Thief, like I said, they're just not really that useful. The traps are just fine. But that pretty much does it for the traps. We're running 5 and 10 spells and 25 monsters overall. Now we'll move on to the extra deck. So for the extra deck, it's probably going to be looking weird, but I only run 1 Perpetua and 2 Redoer. Now, I'm going to say this, in a normal 3-card combo that allows you to arrive on free interruptions, what I mostly do is that I summon the Redoer, then banish the Redoer, kind of like able to bring out the Perpetua, and then like attach with the Perpetua the Flyback if I'm able to search the Retrograde, so I just like have the better trap on it. It's depending obviously on the situation, because sometimes if you do open up with the Retrograde in your hand, you want instead of this one of the other toolbox from the rank 4s that I have. But I'm going to explain why I only need 1 Perpetua, because most of the time, I only find myself even like going to 1 in a game, even in the grind games, because while it is really nice for the Monster Reborn effect, it's only during the standby phase. And sometimes I only going to run out of resources anyway for my deck to actually be matters in terms of like, you know, the Redoer, to like attach more materials which don't really going to do anything, and I can just top deck them to actually help me instead of this to like if I need to. So it's like it's really doesn't really matter to run more than 1, and honestly just really good. Like you can just attach 1 material. I believe during the end phase you can allow to do that, and if you wanted to run the spell, you're more than welcome to. But like I said, the spells most of the time don't really matter. The draw is nice, but I feel like the trap effects and just not running additional more bricks is more important, and you're just going to attach the, like I said, the Flyback or the Retrograde depending on the situation, and this just going to get the effects, which is allowing you to, it's just really good. So yeah, it's, for the most part, that's what it does. Monster Reborn by detaching material during the standby phase, and then attaching to this, which is really nice. So Redoer has 3 effects, which I'm going to go over them briefly. For you allow to detach 3 materials from different types, and then activate the effects. So the first effect is a monster effect, which is allowing you to banish it until the end phase. Spell is allowing you to draw a card, and Trap is allowing you to bounce something, which is really good. The other effect is that during the standby phase, just allowing you to take the top card of your opponent's deck and just put it on him, which is really nice. So, like I said, like even if you use this to search the Lambda, like you banish this, you most of the time like going to attach with this something back, like a trap if you need to, and then you most of the time going to get a monster attached to it anyway. But if not, and you're getting a spell and you're getting lucky, you can just attach with Perpetua a spell basically the next turn, which is, or should I say, a monster basically the next turn to get all 3 effects, which is really good. But that does it for the Time Thief monsters. Now we'll move on to the next utility cards. We're running 4 rank 4s, which are not the Zoo engine, which are Force Tricks, which is just search the Singulanius, and like I said, turning 2 monsters into 3 is actually very important, more than you think. Abyss Dweller, because sometimes the Perpetua is not the good thing for the matchup, and I rather just get the lock out of the grave, which I think is a little bit more important than an actual bounce. Tornado Dragon, because it's pop spells and traps, is a quick effect, sometimes, again, depending on the matchup, sometimes it's better. And then Light Dragon Ad Ignister, because it's just a good card going second, and it's protecting all of your Xyz. So it's like a pseudo mini, what it called, forgot his name. Dingirsu. It's a pseudo mini Dingirsu, which is really, really good for the archetype, or just generally the rank 4 package, which is just really cool. Honestly, if it has another effect with like, not only with Cyphers, but with Xyz, I would probably consider this card awesome, but unfortunately, its last effect is only good with the Cyphers, which is just really, really annoying. But now for the Zoo pack. We're running these 3. This one doesn't matter. As long as it's just a viable zoo and not these 2, that's fine. Could be Tiger Mortar, can be the Borbo, I think the name is, could be any of them. The point is, most of the time what you want to do is that you want to, like, if you have Winder in your hand and, like, for example, like a Ram, you use the Ram, you summon the Hammer Kong, you summon on the Hammer Kong the Chakanine, use the Winder effect to detach the Hammer Kong on the Ram to special summon itself, get a search. Then you use the effect of the Chakanine to summon one of the 2 materials that you didn't send to the graveyard, or any of them, doesn't really matter. And then you, depending on your play, sometimes you're able to just go into this, and that's fine. Sometimes you're not able to, and you just need to use this as an extender for your Xyz. But for mostly, that's what it does. So this is how that works. Most of the time, you just be able to just use this as like your additional interruption, and like have the Chakanine as a material, and just giving you an additional interruption, which is really cool. So I feel like this is very, very nice and very, very strong engine. Obviously, it's up to you, but like I said, these are just really, really helpful. As for the links, we're running 2 utility links, which are pretty much part of your combo, which is Mirage and Lambda. Lambda is mostly the preferred one, but sometimes you do open up like with actually just the normal summonable one, so you just go Mirage, or your opponent negated your Regulator with an Effect Veiler or an Imperm, so you just go Mirage, and then you trigger your what's their name again? Parallel Exceeds. And then Lambda is just really good because Lambda, like I said, search Gamma, which is pretty much what it does for the most part, and it's also very, very easy to bring out. Then for the rest, Phoenix, Unicorn, and Borosaur to help you end games, to help you bounce something, and to help you pop a spell and trap, because it's just really important. As for anybody who's asking why I do not run the Bujinki one, the Link, because it's not good in this deck. Honestly, first off, I didn't really even make that one, because it doesn't really give you anything for the most part. It's just giving you the same materials back, it's just giving you technically a bonus monster, but also kind of like ripping a card out of your hand. And honestly, the other effect of, like, you know, activating the effect to pop a spell and trap if your opponent, like, if you activate an effect on an Xyz monster, doesn't really come up because there's not really a whole lot of continuous spells and traps. Obviously, there is the Eldritch stuff, but you can just pretty much bound this with a Redoer if you need to. So it's like, it kind of doesn't really comes up for the most part, and it just wastes your resources. So I decided to go with these links. But that's pretty much does it for the extra deck, and does it for the deck profile. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's jump right into the side deck. Sorry it was a little bit long, but there was some interactions that needed to be explained. Let's go to the side deck. Alright, so let's jump right into the side deck, which is the side deck is very, very simple for the most part. There's really not too much to talk about. The side deck for this deck is very, very simple, because the deck kind of really have most of its negation and interruption tools already in the main, because you run just a big chunk of hand traps. So for the most part, you're just switching those tools around, so you have like 8 to 9 spots that you can do things with. So let's get down to what I think you should run in terms of your side deck. Obviously, this is up to you, but I'm also going to try to make this as budget as possible. So for the hand trap stuff, in terms of hand traps themselves, I feel like you need to run a 3rd copy of Effect Wheel because it can be really impactful, and 2 additional copies of DD Crow just for sometimes to switch. I know it's a little bit weird of 2 DD Crow but not 3, I just need to make an additional spot for something else, which we'll discuss a little bit later, so only 2 copies of DD Crow. Next up, we're also running an additional Ciphering package, which is 1 additional driver and 3 Delta, I believe, the one that negates spells, because I felt that some particular situations, monster negation is not that important, or very much worth compared to spell negation. And honestly, you can also just do a little bit of a mix around to just have like 2 drivers and then like have 1 delta and 2 gammas. I know that sounds a little bit weird, but sometimes you do need these kind of interruptions, so then you search the other one and then you kind of have 2 interruptions in your hand anyway, so that kind of works. But again, it's just the reason why I decided to run also a driver is because sometimes you do need the additional driver, or sometimes you want to switch your entire gammas into a delta. So I decided to go this way, and honestly, you can do mixtures and things like that the way that you see fit. This is just how that works for me, and it's really works fine because it's giving you the additional interruption of something that you specifically want, which is very cool. Then, after these 7 cards, we have 3 copies of Cosmic Cyclone, which you need some kind of a removal for spells and traps. And lastly, we also run 3 copies of Super Poly and 2 copies of any extra deck fusion monsters that you wish that you feel is good for you. For what I decided to go is I decided to go with Starving Venom and Swamp Dragon, or don't remember his full name, but the Swamp Dragon one. This is the one that I decided to go with. The level 4 water that need 2 monsters with the same type but different attributes. I don't remember exactly what his materials, but he's just really good. Anyway, these are the things that I decided to go with because, like I said, Dark is very much needed around still, although kind of a little bit less, but still. And Mad Dragon is just really good. So I felt like this is also just a nice thing that you can run in your deck, and honestly, you do not really need your extra deck for the most part for some particular spots, so you can just switch this around. That's pretty much does it for the side deck. Now we're going to jump into budget and tech options, which in this particular section, unlike DDDs, it's a little bit more combined, which I'm going to say this right now, because mostly the tech options are also the things that I would recommend for budget, because this deck is mostly cheap. But there are some particular cards here that are a little bit more expensive, and I'm going to display them on screen. So the cards I'm talking about that are expensive, well, first off, you have the Zoo engine, which is a little bit, some cards of it are expensive. So I said, like, let's take the entire engine. So the cards I'm talking about that are expensive are Barrage, are Dryden, I believe, and Chakanine. These are expensive. Tenki's okay in the price, I believe, for the most part. And I used the 2 cheapest Zoo that you can find in terms of their commons and stuff like that, so even if I use the higher rarity, they're cheap. So do not worry about those if you just care about the Zoo things, because Ratpier and Therablades are the more expensive ones, so I decided to use the cheapest ones possible and the ones that are accessible to me. So, like I said, this is what you want to use in terms of that, and let's say we're checking the entire Zoo engine out. Another card that is expensive, it's mostly in the extra deck, is Four Strix, which means that we can also take out the so-called, Singing Lanius, which is giving us a 7 spots, and the last 3 expensive card are, again, it's maybe in common, but it's still a very expensive card because like $5 copy card is 3 copies of Shade Brigadine. So this is another card that's a little bit expensive. As for the extra deck itself, without counting the 4 Strix in the entire Zoo package, which is like 4 cards, you also have the Lambda, and you also have the Unicorn, I guess, is a little bit expensive, and in the case of other thing, you also have Boral Sword. So, I'm going to talk about this. If you are deciding to spend on the Lambda, which I think you should, you have 6 additional spots in your extra deck, and you do specifically want that. If you do not spend on Lambda, I think there's few cards that you can put in. Honestly, I do think that you still want to have the Cyframe engine regardless, because it's just really good in your deck, because if you activate the Regulator, you're able to stop that and get like a free Link monster anyway for these kind of situations. Although maybe you want to switch that to, like, you know, take the Cyframes out to put like 3 DD Crows and 1 Effect Veiler for this kind of a package, or additional more cards. But let's talk about the main deck first, because I feel like the main deck is pretty much the biggest chunk. So there are a few particular options that you can do for the main deck. Like I said, if you do not run the Cyframe stuff, you can just take the Cyframe things out, and then just complete it with your own hand trap. Sorry, it's a little bit sweaty, I don't know why. The room is a little bit hot. Anyway, the point is, you can take that out, and that's kind of like make 13 cards that you can put in if I'm checking everything out. Because the so-called Rocket Engine is pretty cheap, and you can just, worst case scenario, just switch the Tracer into, let's say, a Magna Rocket, or additional Silver Rocket. So that's a little bit of an option. So let's say we switch around. So one of the things that you can do is essentially run the Automatopoeia engine, which is the utopic stuff like that. So these are the numbers that I think you should run on screen, because I feel like seeing them way too much is also not a good thing, because you can open up with multiples. And this is what I think in terms of 10 cards if you want to switch them. If you want to have an 11th cards and you feel you don't see anything more, that's also an option. Then you can just run an additional 2 hand traps instead of 3. But I decided to run with this like that because I felt like this is the best option. So this is pretty much what I'm going to go with the Onomatopoeia. I think the Onomatopoeia engine is better than the additional like junk rank 4 engine, which is not junk, it's just what I mean, like, you know, Goblinberg, stuff like that, which again, this is also an engine that should appear on screen as well in terms of what I think you should run. But like I said, it's more better in my opinion, the Onomatopoeia engine, because it's allowing you to achieve like 3 monsters on the field pretty easily, and then like leave the Zubaba and then just do your usual Xyz things, and then just like revive, stuff like that, and essentially like use the Zubaba effect at the end after everything, and then just still like get 2 rank 4s or 2 rank 4s and a link, pretty much. So I think this is a little bit better on that regard. And like I said, the hand traps could be like an additional 2 copies of maybe DD Crow, or 3 copies of additional DD Crow, depending on what you want specifically to run. As for the extra deck, because we changed a bunch of chunks of things here, first and foremost, you can allow yourself to run the second Perpetua if you specifically really want to. Another good option if you run on a budget, because you kind of don't really, sometimes you kind of find yourself stuck, I recommend to run the Baguska, because Baguska is very, very good, and sometimes your opponents still have a hard time to get over it, so Baguska could be nice. Another thing is that you might to still consider to running some links, so one of the goodest link for any deck, just because it's very, very generic, is Beat Cop. So you can run Beat Cop as one of your links, so we already have 3 cards already in our deck. Additional thing that you can run a particular, Borreload instead of Borrow's Sword, because Borreload is also pretty cheap, and it's also still very, very good. Another thing you can run is maybe a Castell if you want to. You can also run a Utopia and Utopia the Lightning package. Also, that might mean if Utopia Double is still very, very cheap, which I'm not sure. You can also run the Double or Nothing thing. So you can run, these are the options should be appearing on screen, but like, these are the options that you have in terms of things, and obviously just additional rank 4s that you feel that are necessary, or links that you think that you need to fill up your extra deck with, that are cheap. Because sometimes, let's be honest, some people don't really have the money for getting that much. And this is pretty much a budget deck, but you sometimes need to spend a little bit more money on it, which sometimes kind of feels bad, so I'm trying to think as much as possible for you what's the best options, and I think these are the best options as I shown in the main deck and in the extra deck. But that's pretty much it for that. You're allowed to rewind if you want to see check 1 again, and let me know in the comments if you feel there's other budget options that I missed, because honestly I can always miss something that I'm just not thinking of. But that's pretty much it. Let's jump right into combos, shall we? Which is pretty much the spiciest things every time in my videos. Let's jump right into it. Alright, so let's get down into the combo section. So for the combo section, I prepared for you 3 card combos that are kind of showing the best card of the deck for the most part, because I feel like showing the best cards allow you to show mostly the interactions, but like the point is, you're trying, like I said a million times, you're trying to end up on like 3 interruptions overall, and then additional support from your hand traps and additional stuff. So for the cards for the first combo, I decided to go with Regulator, of Parallel Exceed, and Quick Launch to show you how the deck works. And like I said, it's pretty much very, very nice. You're going to see at the end of this is going to bring you Lambda, Regulator, and an additional rank 4 for this particular thing, just because I want to not deal with the additional, triggering by a quick effect. I wanted to essentially get an Abyss Dweller, but it's technically doesn't really matter. It could be a Perpetua, it could be a Light Dragon, it could be a Tornado Dragon, it could be whatever you want to. Just for this particular combo, I just decided to go in an Abyss Dweller, just to let you know in advance. So you can put whatever rank 4 you wish, specifically for combo number 1. So what you're going to do first is that you're going to use the Regulator to summon these 2 specifically, because you didn't open up with the Winder, so it's really important to get it out of your deck, because it's giving you the search for the counter trap. You're then going to use these 2 to make the 4 tricks, like I said in the deck profile, turning 2 monsters into 3, because you're specifically going to touch the Puzzle Ship, giving you the Singing Lanius, special summon the Singing, and to touch the other material for a Puzzle Ship. You're then going to use these 2 that not banishing yourself, because maybe you will be able to use this next turn. You're going to turn them into a Lambda. And because you did that, Parallel Exceed will be able to special summon itself and special summon another copy, which giving you the 2 level 4s that you need. Next up, you're going to activate Quick Launch, while giving you the last level 4 that you need directly from your deck. And then you're going to use these 2 to make up your Redoer, and you're also going to make the other rank 4, which, like I said, for this particular situation and example, I use an Abyss Dweller. You're then going to use Redoer effect to banish itself and triggering Lambda's effect. You're then going to set the counter trap, and then during the end phase, you're going to search and get to your hand this thing, which is Gamma. So even without particular any, any other interruptions in your hand, let's say these two are not interruptions, you still ended up with 3 cards on 3 interruptions, because this is 1, this is 2, this is 3. Honestly, this can also be a perpetual, like I said, to turn this into a more direct interruption depending on what you want to, and this can also be an additional interruption himself if it's able to draw something or get something that you really need. So it's it's depending on the situation. So it's really doesn't matter. But like I said, it's overall 3 interruptions, which is 1, 2, 3, which is very cool. But that is pretty much it for combo number 1. Let's move on to combo number 2. Alright, so for combo number 2, we want to show up the strength of the Zoo engine for the off chance that you do open up with it. So for the Zoo engine, what do we have in our hand is Ram, and then we have in our hand a Winder and a Parallel Exceed. Now obviously it can be different kind of interactions. Sometimes you have to not get the Parallel Exceed and you only technically get 2 interruptions, but it's still giving you the ability to play, which is very important. So let's get started with this one. So starting things off, we're going to normal summon the Ram, turning him into the Zoo that we do not need. In this particular case, like I showed you, I use Hammer Kong, but it can be something else. You're then going to use the effect of the Winder to detach one of the materials to then special summon itself, get the search for the counter trap, and then use Chakanine effect to revive one of the things in the graveyard, one of the Zoos in the graveyard. One thing that you need to remember is that this one cannot be, if it's summoned, cannot be used as an Xyz material, so you have to use this as a link material anyway. You're then going to use the Chakanine to turn up your Zodiac Trident, and then you're going to use these two other monsters, which is the Winder and the Ram, to turn on a Lambda. You're then going to use Parallel Exceed effect in your hand to then special summon itself in another copy, and then like usual make the Redoer, and then during the end phase search the Psyframe Gear Gamma because you activate Redoer effect, and Redoer return to your field. So once again, 3 interruptions. Although in this particular situation, the 3 interruptions are kind of like 100% the same. There's nothing really much you can do about it, because you do have the Trident that you have to go into, because otherwise you do not get an additional interruption, so that's kind of worth it. You have the Gamma and you have the counter trap. That's how that works. Also, I should have played this around here, around Mech Knights, which should have put the counter traps in one of these two, but it doesn't really matter for the example. But like I said, if you have some particular additional cards, like don't play them in the same column. You can play around Mech Knights, which is very important. Just a little bit of a tip for you right there. But for this particular example, I just decided not to because there are really no point. But yeah, you got this board, which is 3 interruptions once again, and once again, if you have additional interruptions in your hand, it's supporting it. But that's pretty much for combo number 2. Let's jump right into combo number 3. Alright, so for combo number 3, let's say you didn't open up with Parallel Exceed, right? Let's say Parallel Exceed is very important, but you didn't open up with it, because sometimes happens. But instead of Parallel Exceed, you open up with a Winder. Sorry, whatever, I don't know what got stuck in the throat. But let's say you did not, you open up with a Winder. I can show you that even if you open up with the Winder, you can still end up in the same end result as combo number 1. So let's get started with this. So starting things off, once again, you're going to summon the Regulator. The Regulator is going to tribute itself, and since you have the Winder in your hand, you're going to summon, instead of a Winder from your deck, you're going to summon a Chronocoder. You're then going to once again make the Singing Lanius play with the 4 Strix, and then instead of detaching for the Puzzle Ship, you're actually going to detach for the Winder, which then will allow you to special summon him from the hand and get the counter trap search. Then you're going to summon the Singing, making the Lambda, usual, and then you're going to actually activate Quick Launch because you technically don't have Parallel Exceed. How are you going to go from that? Well, you're going to activate the Quick Launch and get yourself a Tracer, which is going to help you to make the Redoer right away. You're then going to use Battleship effect to detach the one of the materials to summon itself, and then you're going to use Redoer effect to banish itself, to then giving you a search with Lambda, but it's also going to trigger up Chronocoder effect, which, like I said, allowing you when an Xyz monster you control leave the field by a card effect, it's allowed to special summon itself from the graveyard. So you're then going to use this effect, special summon, and then you're going to make once again the rank 4 of your choosing. Like I said, for my particular decision, I made an Abyss Dweller, but you can make whatever you want. And then during the end phase, you get the search and you get back the Redoer to your side of the field. And once again, 1, 2, 3 interruptions. So you have 3 interruptions without counting the Redoer to maybe even doing anything. And if it's banished itself, it's also able to let you to search another gamma, which technically doesn't matter because they're going to banish themselves the materials during the end phase, but it's allowing you to get a useless card out of your deck, so that's also kind of really good to then like make your draws better, which not really help that much, but it does increase your chances, I guess. It's a little bit more talking into more of a chance thing, but it doesn't really matter. The point is, this is your end board. You got the 3 interruptions in all 3 combos, which is very, very important to put up. Obviously, you can open up with worse hands, or sometimes with better hands with just using 1 card more, then you end up on 4 interruptions. But for the most part, this is what you want to achieve with. You want to end up with like 2 to 3 interruptions and additional interruptions in your hand. And that's pretty much it for that. So yeah, hope you enjoy this particular thing. These combos are very, very simple and very, very straightforward. It's kind of like a DDD of Ascent, because the combos are kind of feeling much the same, and you know the interactions of the same cards, but this is also achievable with the Gagaga engine or the Onomatopoeia engine if you have that, which I mentioned as well. Not sure if that's 100% achievable with the Goblinberg / that engine, because sometimes that happens, but for the most part, this is very, very much achievable. And yeah, it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward, and just a very, very good fun with the time thieves. So hope you had fun yourself and you learned some few things. Remember, creativity is the key in this game. Have a good day, stay safe, and see you in the next week. Bye bye.